Arrogant boxer forced a young black Jamaican woman to fight to humiliate her. Then the unthinkable happened. "Look what we have here," Victoria Sterling sneered, pointing to the 18-year-old who had just walked into the elite Manhattan gym. "Looks like someone got lost on the way to the neighborhood gym." The sound of punches hitting the heavy bag stopped abruptly. All eyes turned to KASHIA Campbell, who was holding a worn sports bag and wearing holey sneakers. Her dark skin contrasted with the immaculate whiteness of the exclusive environment where monthly fees cost more than 3 months' minimum wage. Victoria Sterling, women's world boxing champion for 2 consecutive years, was known not only for her lethal fists, but for her even sharper tongue. At 26, she had built a career based on social media taunts and controversial statements that generated millions of views. Her latest Instagram post already had 500,000 likes. A photo of her flexing her muscles with a caption, "When you're naturally superior, you don't have to pretend to be equal." "Sorry," KASHIA muttered, checking the address on her cracked cell phone. "I thought this was the youth scholarship program." Victoria's laughter echoed through the gym like an annoying siren. "Scholarship program? Honey, this isn't a social project. We train real athletes here, not social experiments." KASHIA Campbell had arrived in the United States just 6 months ago, bringing with her the dreams of a Jamaican family who had saved every penny to give her a chance. She worked 16 hours a day, cleaning offices to pay for a room she shared with 3 other people in the Bronx. The scholarship program was her only chance to train at a decent facility. "The program exists," said a firm voice. Tom Rodriguez, veteran trainer and owner of the gym, emerged from his office with a folder in his hand. "And KASHIA Campbell is on the approved list." Victoria rolled her eyes dramatically. "Really, Tom? Are you going to turn my training facility into an NGO? My sponsors won't like that at all. Her sponsors pay for results, not for her opinion about who trains here," Tom replied dryly. But Victoria wasn't finished. She approached KASHIA with a smile that looked more like a threat. "You know what? Since you want to train with the big boys so badly, how about we prove whether you really deserve to be here?" The gym fell silent. Everyone knew what was coming next. "A friendly spar," Victoria continued, savoring every word. "You against me? 3 rounds. If you can last, you can stay. If not," she made a dismissive gesture with her hand. KASHIA felt the weight of everyone's gaze. She knew this was a trap. A public humiliation designed to break her spirit before she even began. But there was something in her eyes, a flame that Victoria couldn't quite identify, that remained unshaken. "I accept," KASHIA said calmly. Victoria frowned, waiting for tears or pleas. "Are you sure? Because when I'm done with you, you'll question whether it's worth dreaming so big." "I'm sure," KASHIA repeated. And for the first time since she had arrived, she smiled. What Victoria Sterling didn't know was that she was about to find out why. In the slums of Kingston, Jamaica, KASHIA Campbell was known by a very specific nickname, Lightning. And like all lightning, she only showed her true power when the storm hit. While Victoria was already planning how to turn the humiliation into viral content for her social media, Tom Rodriguez watched the determined gleam in KASHIA's eyes and felt a familiar chill. The same one he felt when he recognized a truly special talent disguised as apparent vulnerability. If this story of prejudice and determination is moving you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what happened in those 3 rounds was so unexpected that even today people wonder how an ordinary young woman from the Bronx managed to rewrite the rules of a sport dominated by the elite. News of the friendly fight spread through the gym like wildfire. In less than an hour, several boxers, trainers, and even some sports journalists were on their way. Victoria Sterling versus an unknown Jamaican. It promised to be the kind of cruel entertainment that social media loved to consume. 3 rounds, 16th of gloves, Tom Rodriguez established, trying to downplay the impending massacre. "No bets, no live broadcast, just sparring." Victoria laughed. "Tom, relax. It'll be quick. It probably won't even make it to the 2nd round." She was already recording stories on Instagram, narrating for her 2 million followers. "Guys, you won't believe what's happening here. Some random girl wants to challenge me. I'm going to teach her a lesson in humility she'll never forget." The comments started pouring in. "Destroy her, Victoria. These people need to know their place. Show them why you're the queen." While Victoria based in the attention, KASHIA silently made her way to the locker room. Her hands weren't shaking. They never did before a fight. but her heart was racing with a mixture of controlled anger and painful memories she tried to keep buried. Tom followed her. "KASHIA, you don't have to do this! I know the scholarship program is important, but it's not worth getting hurt over her arrogance." "I won't get hurt," KASHIA replied calmly, testing the borrowed gloves. "She's been world champion for 2 years. She has professional technique, knockout power, experience. And I have something she'll never have," KASHIA interrupted, looking directly into the veteran trainer's eyes. Tom frowned. What would that be? Hunger. The word echoed in the modest locker room. Tom Rodriguez had trained hundreds of athletes over the course of 30 years, but he had rarely heard that word spoken with such conviction. There was something in KASHIA's eyes, an intensity he had recognized only in true predators of the ring. "Tell me something," Tom said, sitting down next to her. "Why did you take it? Why not just ignore her taunts?" KASHIA closed her eyes for a moment. The memories came flooding back, the streets of Kingston. Her mother's screams begging her to stop fighting. The feel of fists connecting with surgical precision. The nickname Lightning whispered with fear and respect in the slums. "Because I've lived this story before," she finally said. "People like Victoria think they can break us with words, with contempt, with the certainty that we are inferior, but they forgot one important thing. What would that be? Those who grow up fighting for survival don't fight just for sport. They fight to exist." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. There was something prophetic in those words, as if KASHIA were revealing not only her motivation, but prophesying Victoria's fate. Outside, Victoria continued her performance for the cell phone cameras. "Look at what that girl is wearing," she sneered, pointing to KASHIA's worn-out sneakers left in the locker room. "I bet she's never even stepped in a real ring. She probably learned how to box by watching YouTube." Laughter echoed through the gym, but some of the more experienced boxers remained silent. There was something about KASHIA's posture, the way she had accepted the challenge without hesitation, that aroused an instinctive caution. Marcus Williams, a former middleweight champion who now trained at the gym, whispered to his sparring partner, "Man, I don't know. I've seen that calm before. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous." Victoria, however, was too far gone in her own arrogance to notice the warning signs. "You know what the problem is with people from third world countries?" She continued to the cameras. "They confuse desperation with skill. They think that just because life is hard, they automatically know how to fight." KASHIA emerged from the locker room at that very moment, wearing simple shorts and a tank top that revealed surprisingly defined arms for someone who had supposedly never trained seriously. His movements were fluid, economical, like a cat preparing to attack. "Ready to learn?" Victoria asked sarcastically. "Always," KASHIA replied. What Victoria Sterling didn't know, and could never have imagined, was that Lightning Campbell had started fighting at the age of 8 on the streets of Kingston, not for sport or fun, but because it was either that or starve. By the time she was 12, she was beating boys 3 years older than her in underground fights that earned enough money to keep her family alive for another week. By 16, he had become a local legend. Not for his brutality, but for his uncanny ability to anticipate moves and counterattack with lightning speed. Hence the nickname he carried like a scar of honor. When she finally got her visa to the United States, she swore to herself she would never set foot in a ring again. But some promises are made to be broken when dignity is at stake. Tom adjusted KASHIA's gloves, noticing something that surprised him. Her hands were perfectly relaxed, but other muscles had the density of someone who had trained her entire life. "KASHIA, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Have you really never fought before?" KASHIA smiled for the first time since she had arrived at the gym. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but one that carried secrets capable of rewriting the entire situation. "Define," she replied. At that moment, while Victoria continued her performance for social media, and spectators mentally bet on how long the amateur would last, something extraordinary was about to happen. Because sometimes when we underestimate someone based on appearances and preconceptions, we discover that the real predators are exactly those who have learned to camouflage their strength until the exact moment to reveal it. While Victoria Sterling continued her humiliation campaign on social media, she had already posted 17 stories mocking the Jamaican amateur. Something completely different was happening behind the scenes at the gym. Tom Rodriguez had decided to investigate KASHIA Campbell further. 30 years of decided to investigate KASHIA Campbell further. 30 years of training boxers had taught him that true strength rarely shouts. And there was something about this young woman that defied all logic. Her hands didn't have beginner's calluses. Her reflexes were too fast. And above all, her calmness was unnatural for someone about to face a world champion. "KASHIA," Tom called when she finished adjusting her gloves. "Can I see you do some basic moves? Just to gauge your level." What happened over the next 5 minutes made Tom question everything he thought he knew about natural talent. KASHIA moved around the ring with a fluidity that seemed to defy gravity. Her punches on the heavy bag had a surgical precision that he had only seen in fighters with decades of experience. "My God," Tom muttered to himself. "Who is this girl really?" At that moment, the gym door opened, and someone walked in who made KASHIA freeze completely. It was Winston Campbell, a 50-year-old man with scarred hands and eyes that had seen a lot. Her uncle, who had flown in from Miami as soon as he heard about the fight through a mutual cousin. "Lightning," Winston said simply. The nickname echoed through the gym like a gunshot. Some of the older boxers frowned as if trying to remember where they had heard that name before. "Uncle Winston, what are you doing here?" KASHIA asked, her voice betraying her nervousness for the first time. "I came to see if my niece has completely lost her mind," he replied in English with a thick Jamaican accent. "I thought we agreed that those days were behind us." Tom approached, intrigued. "Do you two know each other?" Winston looked at Tom with the expression of someone deciding how much of the truth to reveal. "I've known this girl since she was 8 years old, and I can assure you that Victoria Sterling has no idea what she's about to face." While this conversation was taking place in the corner of the ring, Victoria was on the other side of the gym recording more content for TikTok. "Guys, look at this," she whispered to the camera. She even brought her family to watch her get humiliated. "How cute, right? They'll have a lot to console her about later." The comments on her posts had exploded. "Victoria is going to destroy that girl. Teach her not to mess with Americans. Show her what real boxing is." Winston watched Victoria for a few seconds, then shook his head in disgust. Arrogant. Just the type Lightning used to. Well, let's just say he taught humility on the streets of Kingston. "Uncle, please," KASHIA begged. "Don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know." "Know what?" asked Tom, growing more curious. Winston sighed deeply. "Tom, can I call you that? You seem like a decent man. So I'm going to tell you something that might change your perspective on this fight." He pointed to KASHIA, who was now training alone in the corner. "That girl over there was considered the best street fighter Kingston ever produced." "Street fighter," Tom repeated. At 12, she defeated men 3 times her size. By 15, she had a reputation that made gangsters respect her. Lightning Campbell wasn't just a nickname. It was a warning. Winston paused. "She stopped fighting when she got her visa to come here. She swore she'd never set foot in a ring again." Tom looked at KASHIA with new eyes. Then why did she agree to fight Victoria? Because Winston said some people confuse kindness with weakness. And Lightning never tolerated being underestimated because of her color, her gender, or her background. Across the gym, Victoria had finished another series of posts mocking KASHIA and was now talking to her manager on the phone. "Michael, this is going to go viral. A world champion against an amateur. It's the kind of content sponsors love. Total domination. Just make sure you don't hurt her too badly, Victoria," said the manager's voice over the speakerphone. "We don't want any lawsuits for bodily injury." Victoria laughed loudly. "Michael, relax. It'll be so quick she won't have time to hurt herself. Seriously." Winston overheard this conversation and his eyes narrowed. "Tom, can I give you some advice?" "Bet on Lightning. Why?" "Because Victoria Sterling may be a world champion, but she's never fought for survival. She's never faced someone who learned that losing means not eating. Lightning isn't here to look pretty. She's here to prove a point." At that moment, KASHIA approached them, sweat dripping down her face after her intense workout. "Uncle Winston, what are you telling Tom?" "The truth, kid. That you're not the helpless victim that this American thinks you are." KASHIA looked around the gym, noticing that some of the other boxers were now watching her with renewed curiosity and respect. "Uncle, I really don't want to." "Don't want to what?" "Show them who you really are." "Lightning. You've spent the last few months cleaning toilets because you wanted to start a new life. But when someone tries to humiliate you because of your color, your background, your past, no new life can erase what's in your blood." Tom felt a chill. "KASHIA, can I ask you something? Why did you really accept this fight?" KASHIA was silent for a long moment, staring at Victoria, who continued recording content from the other side of the gym. When she finally spoke, her voice had a harshness Tom had never heard before. Because people like Victoria Sterling think they can diminish us, humiliate us, put us in our place based solely on the color of our skin or where we came from. She looked at me and saw an easy victim, a story for her social media, a joke to entertain her followers. KASHIA paused. What she doesn't know is that where I grew up, respect isn't given, it's earned. And when someone tries to take away our dignity, she smiled. But there was something predatory about that smile. Well, sometimes lightning has to remind people why storms are feared. At that moment, as Victoria Sterling continued her arrogant performance for the cameras, completely oblivious to the conversation that was changing everything just a few feet away, everyone in the gym realized they were about to witness something far beyond a simple friendly fight. It was the moment when years of silent humiliation would finally find their voice through the fists of someone who had learned on the hardest streets in the world that sometimes the only language certain people understand is that of force applied with surgical precision. The bell rang and the two fighters met in the center of the ring. Victoria went on the attack immediately, throwing a flurry of quick jabs that sliced the air where KASHIA had been a millisecond earlier. "What the hell?" Victoria muttered, frowning as she saw her punches connect with nothing but air. KASHIA moved like smoke, always one step ahead, always out of reach. Her feet slid across the canvas with a fluidity that defied physics, as if she could predict every move before Victoria even thought it. "Stay still, girl," Victoria shouted in frustration, increasing the force of her punches. Then it happened. At the exact moment Victoria lost her balance after a poorly calculated cross, KASHIA counter-attacked. Her left fist connected with the side of Victoria's face with a sharp sound that echoed throughout the gym. Victoria staggered backward, touching her face in disbelief. She had never been hit with such precision by a smaller opponent. "Impossible," she whispered, but KASHIA was already moving again. What followed was a demonstration of martial artistry that reduced the gym to absolute silence. KASHIA wasn't just fighting. She was conducting a symphony of controlled violence. Every punch was calculated, every movement had purpose. Every dodge seemed choreographed. Victoria, desperate, tried to use her weight and reach advantage, but it was like trying to catch lightning with her hands. For every blow she landed, she received 3 in return. For every advance she made, KASHIA had already anticipated and counterattacked. "Who is this girl?" someone in the audience shouted. Winston smiled from where he watched. "Lightning Campbell," he murmured proudly. The moment of truth came in the second round. Victoria, already panting and her face marked, realized she had made the biggest mistake of her career. Her arrogant social media posts continued to be shared, but now the comments had completely changed in tone. "Victoria is getting beaten up by an amateur. Where's the world champion? That Jamaican is destroying her." Jerry, her manager, shouted frantic instructions from the corner, but Victoria could barely hear him over the roar of the crowd, which was now openly rooting against her. That's when KASHIA decided to show her true colors. "Lightning was never just a nickname," she said calmly, approaching Victoria, who was backing away against the ropes. It was a warning. The combination that followed was so fast that the cell phone cameras could barely capture it. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, 4 punches in less than 2 seconds, all connecting with surgical precision. Victoria collapsed onto the canvas like a demolished building. The gym exploded. People screamed, cheered, filmed everything for social media. Victoria tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't respond. For the first time in her life, the undefeated world champion had been knocked out by someone she had called a social project. 10! shouted Tom, officiating the fight. Knockout. KASHIA calmly walked over to the corner where Victoria was being treated. "You said you wanted to teach me a lesson," she said softly. "I hope you learned that respect isn't earned by color, nationality, or bank account. It's earned by character." Victoria looked at KASHIA with eyes filled with tears of humiliation, and for the first time, something that could be respect. Jerry rushed over to check Victoria's phone. Her stories mocking KASHIA had gone viral, but now for completely different reasons. Thousands of comments ridiculed her arrogance. Victoria getting destroyed by the person she ridiculed her arrogance. Victoria getting destroyed by the person she called an amateur. That's what happens when prejudice meets reality. Lightning Campbell ended Victoria's career in 3 rounds. "Oh my God, Victoria," Jerry said, showing her his phone. "You have to see this. Your account lost 100,000 followers in the last hour. Sponsors are canceling their contracts." Victoria took her phone with trembling hands. Her last post mocking KASHIA had become a memorial to her own humiliation. The comments were merciless. Who laughed last laughed best. Jamaican taught that racist a lesson. Lightning Campbell, arrogant Victoria. Tom approached KASHIA, who was being celebrated by the entire audience. "Lightning, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why didn't you tell them who you really were from the beginning?" KASHIA looked at Victoria, who was still being helped to her feet, completely defeated physically and emotionally. "Because sometimes people need to dig their own grave before they understand the size of the hole they've gotten themselves into." Winston hugged his niece proudly. "You're still Lightning?" "No, Uncle," KASHIA replied, watching Victoria being led out of the gym under a barrage of sarcastic comments. "Lightning was who I needed to be to survive. Today I showed who I really am, someone who doesn't accept disrespect but who fights for dignity, not cruelty." As the cameras continued to roll and videos of the knockout went viral on social media, one question hung in the air. Could a single fight rewrite not only 2 careers, but the way an entire community views prejudice, privilege, and the true measure of human strength? 3 months later, the contrast couldn't be more brutal. Victoria Sterling, once an undefeated world champion, sat in the modest apartment she had rented after losing her Miami mansion. Her sponsors had canceled all contracts after the viral video reached 50 million views in a week. Victoria Sterling, getting destroyed by the woman she called an amateur, had become the most shared meme of the year, turning her arrogance into a global joke. Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, all the brands that once paid millions for her image, now refused to even return her calls. Jerry, her former manager, had been clear in their last conversation. "Victoria, you don't understand. It's not just about the fight you lost. It's about who you showed yourself to be. No one wants to associate their brand with prejudice and arrogance." Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, KASHIA Campbell was signing her first professional contract with Golden Gloves Promotions. The value, $2 million for just the first 3 fights with a renewal clause that could reach $50 million if she kept up her performance. Lightning Campbell had become not just a sporting phenomenon, but a symbol of resilience. Brands that valued authenticity and overcoming adversity lined up to sponsor her. Under Armour launched an entire line inspired by her story, earned, not given. Tom Rodriguez was in the gym office when he received an unexpected call. "Hello, Tom. This is ESPN. We want to make a documentary about how you discovered Lightning Campbell." "I didn't discover anything," Tom replied honestly. "She always knew who she was. She just needed someone to respect her before seeing her fists in action." The transformation of the gym had also been dramatic. The scholarship program, once a modest initiative, now received donations from across the country. Young people from disadvantaged communities arrived daily. Inspired by KASHIA's story, the waiting list had more than 500 names. Winston Campbell visited his niece regularly, always with the same pride shining in his eyes. "Remember what I said about hunger?" he asked during one of his visits. "You prove that it's not about where we come from, but about the fire we carry inside." Victoria, for her part, had tried several times to reinvent herself. She created a YouTube channel apologizing, but the comments were merciless. She tried to return to boxing, but no major promoter would accept her terms. Her savings quickly evaporated without the income from sponsorships. In a desperate interview for a third-rate podcast, Victoria finally said the word she should have said months earlier. "I was completely wrong. KASHIA Campbell wasn't just an exceptional fighter. She was a person I should have respected from the very beginning. My prejudice blinded me to her greatness." But the internet has a long memory. The clip became a meme again. Victoria trying to apologize after losing everything. KASHIA, when she heard about the interview, showed the class that had always set her apart. "I don't have any anger toward her," she said during an interview with Sports Illustrated magazine. "Anger consumes those who carry it. I'd rather use my energy building bridges for other young women like me." Her foundation, Lightning Dreams, had already helped 300 young women from disadvantaged communities obtain scholarships and sports opportunities. The foundation's first gym was to be opened in Kingston, Jamaica, in the same community where she had discovered that her fists could be more than weapons for survival. During the opening ceremony, broadcast live around the world, KASHIA held the microphone with the same hands that had knocked out a world champion. "This story is not about revenge," she said, her voice echoing through the speakers. "It's about dignity. It's about proving that respect is not earned by privilege, but by character." The audience erupted in applause. But she wasn't finished. "Victoria Sterling gave me the greatest gift of her life. She underestimated me. And when someone underestimates you, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it as fuel to become unbeatable." Tom Rodriguez, watching from the front row, wiped away a discreet tear. He had trained champions for decades, but he had never seen anyone transform humiliation into inspiration with such elegance. Months later, when Lightning Campbell became the unified world champion, knocking out her opponent in the same second round she had defeated Victoria, the first person she thanked in her speech was not her trainer nor her family. "I want to thank all the people who tried to put me down, humiliate me, and put me in my place. You taught me that true power doesn't come from where we're born or the color of our skin. It comes from an absolute refusal to accept that others define our limits." Victoria Sterling watched that fight on television in her rented apartment alone. When the referee raised KASHIA's hand, declaring her the new world champion, Victoria finally understood the difference between talent and greatness. A person can be born with talent, but greatness is forged in the furnace of adversity. KASHIA Campbell hadn't just won a fight in that Manhattan gym. She had rewritten the rules about what it means to be strong, about what it means to deserve respect, and most importantly, about how the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's becoming everything they said you could never be. And while Lightning Campbell shone in the spotlight of global success, proving that some storms don't destroy, they purify and strengthen. A lesson echoed for anyone who has ever been underestimated, humiliated, or diminished. Never let anyone define your limits based on prejudice. The greatest victory is proving them completely wrong about who you really are. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that sometimes being underestimated is exactly the advantage we need to rewrite our own story in spectacular fashion.